Hello and welcome to your post-daily news update for Monday, December the 13th. I am John Pollock, joined by Wai Ting, feeling a little bit more professional today.
Yeah. For those of you watching on YouTube, brand new opening courtesy of the man Dickie Bird himself. What an introduction! Thank you very much for that, Dickie.
A fantastic contribution here to the
hmm
post-daily news updates, which, of course, can be found weekly live here at youtube.com/postwrestling every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Audio version available for all members at postwrestlingcafe.com. And later this week, on Friday, Brandon Thurston will be joining both of us for the post daily news update. So I look forward to that as winter is coming, ratings are coming, and Brandon Thurston is coming on Friday.
Okay, fantastic, excellent.
How was your weekend?
Pretty good, John. Yeah. We're enjoying a lot of mild weather, wildly mild weather in Toronto.
Mild. It's up to, I think, 8 Celsius today. I went outside expecting it to be much colder, and it was remarkably warm by Toronto December standards.
Yeah. I mean, I never really know whether or not to celebrate something like this, but for now, I am enjoying it.
So over the weekend, a couple of big shows to talk about. Ring of Honor's Final Battle went down on Saturday night in Baltimore as the company presented its end of an era. And this was a very unique show. And I would, first of all, you can check out the full post show that myself, Mike Murray, and the great W.H. Park did for patrons up on the site. But way going into this, I think the most interesting element was what would the tone of this show be? And I thought that having Ian Riccaboni as the voice of this show from start to finish ended it, I would say, in a more uplifting fashion than where this could have been a really depressing one, while also being very clear in that we don't know what the future is. I mean, that was flat out said. And I think there were definitely moments where you are feeling like this is at the best, you can say, uncertainty in the future. But there were a lot of callbacks to the past, many shout outs. And with the addition of the taped messages that were sent in, they tried to present a celebration of Ring of Honor while there is the sobering understanding of what is to come for Ring of Honor. And it's going to be a much different operation.
Yeah, and let me just preface by saying I've only seen the main event as well as highlights from the show, so I can't really give a full assessment on everything. But from what I was able to see, I felt like they were handling the situation probably as best as they can. I mean, they themselves probably have no idea whether or not they were coming. Of course, you can't simply say that outright, but at least looking ahead to the future, as much as they can say, is that we hope to be back in April. And without announcing a roster, without announcing really any sort of returning champions, without being able to announce a date, I felt they were able to at least capture, what felt like a good goodbye, while at the same time leaving it a bit open-ended for a continuation.
Yeah, I found that interesting. Like, they did have the sign off at the end of "See you in April," and they had a graphic at the end about a new era begins in 2022. But I would imagine, like, if you were someone that sat down to watch this show, they made no big deal out of Supercard of Honor. There was no date left with the viewer, which this is your last opportunity to, I would say, have a captive ROH audience that I would have wanted to drill home. Hey, this is the date, and have that information ready. I fully expect, like, Supercard of Honor, like, you would think, like, there's almost no risk of running this show the most lucrative weekend of the year. It's just you can't announce anything because you probably have no idea what is going to make that card up. But that was notable that you didn't even have a date to at least send people to at the end, and you could have watched this and very much felt like this was sort of Ring of Honor saying goodbye. They were also throwing the curveball of losing its champion several days before the event with Bandito out. Jay Lethal was put in as the replacement, and having him and Jonathan Gresham vie for the old ROH championship belt. And just kind of having Gresham go off the air as champion with the entire locker room and staff out there ringside. What did you think about the main event, which I would have liked it to have a bit more time to breathe? Like, it did feel like they were adamant about getting done by 11 Eastern, which they were done right on the mark to have your out.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the match and I enjoyed it really just as sort of like an exhibition of both men's skill crammed into like a relatively short amount of time. I I you know, I don't have too many complaints there. I felt like it was a good match, maybe not necessarily an amazing match, but like that you would, maybe put on your top of the year list. But still, I think the setting was adequate enough. They had the whole roster come out ringside, feeling. eh, I think if it was a moment that was a little bit delayed later on in the match, maybe it would have felt a little bit bigger and maybe a little less contrived. But I think given the circumstance, given how much time they had in the broadcast, I think having those two put on the performance that they did, I felt satisfied.
And then the angles on the show, which appeared to be all to set up things happening outside of the promotion. You had Deonna Purrazzo coming out with the Reina de Reinas championship, stating that she's going to regain the Knockouts title at Hard to Kill and then wants to face Roxy, winner take all. The Briscoes, who regained the ROH tag titles, then issued a challenge to any team out there and were confronted by FTR. And we had the arrival of Titan, the former Braun Strowman. And yeah, in all cases, Way, I don't think any of these things are going to play out on ROH television or an ROH event. This is all kind of to set up stuff outside of the company, you would figure.
Yeah, certainly makes it interesting to think about what was agreed upon backstage. Was this a case of, because I can't imagine Ring of Honor paying an Adam Scherr price simply for this little act. Was it a bit of a barter agreement saying, "Hey, let us promote our thing on this platform. We can get this guy to give you a bit of buzz coming out of the show," or what? I'm not sure. In either case, just kind of seeing some of the buzz online. I mean, it did help the show in that it added a bit of surprise, added a bit of star power. How much favor did it necessarily gain for EC3's free the narrative? I'm really not so sure. I think coming out of the show, there was a lot of criticism that his promo might have gone a little bit long. In that,
I think it comes down to whether you enjoy these free to the narratives or not. I don't know like how large of an audience there is for this kind of presentation. It's certainly something different. It's kind of EC3's vision, which listen, we always talk about cookie cutter stuff and people trying different things. This is certainly something different, and I just think it comes down to what your taste is of how this form of professional wrestling is delivered, and you're either a fan of it or this is not going to work for you.
Yeah, yeah, and overall, I think it gets at least people talking and aware of what he's doing, what EC3 and Adam Scherr and all those guys are doing. So, people know Weston Blake and the other guy who was walking out with him.
Fodder, as John Cena was able to update me on. Dude, like nobody knew who this guy was on Saturday night. Nobody.
Right. Yeah. But,
that was the show. As I mentioned, I thought Ian Riccaboni was great on this show. I mean, he is someone that he has stated that he is going to be doing a New Japan Strong event coming up on January the 15th, which he stated on Lehigh Valley podcast that he's treating this as a tryout. Now, the circumstances of this, which Dave Meltzer followed up on, is the fact that Kevin Kelly is going to Japan. He may even be there or is en route to he'll be there for the Tokyo Dome shows, obviously. And he's going to be in Japan until the New Japan Cup in March. So that's how, like, wow. Kevin Kelly is pretty much moving to Japan for a couple of months to do New Japan commitments. So Ian Riccaboni will be doing that Strong event on January 15th. And, me, Mike, WH and I, we were actually talking, not on the show, but when they were over here, about kind of the prospects for a broadcaster such as an Ian Riccaboni, who I think is pretty universally praised for his work in Ring of Honor. What it comes down to, not all that different than talent out there, are what are the job openings that exist. And you would hope that there is a place for an Ian Riccaboni in the sport. I would also hope the same thing for a Lenny Leonard, who, he does have an affiliation now with Game Changer Wrestling, but there's some very talented broadcasters out there. And I hope that, Ian Riccaboni is somebody that is in a prominent role somewhere, anywhere.
Agreed. Yeah. Coming out of the show, we ask, I mean, at least for somebody like myself, I ask, like, what are the talking points? What are the kind of big headlines coming out of it, and what are the positives coming out of it? And unanimously, as you mentioned, there's been praise for Ian Riccaboni's work, not just on this show but throughout his run in Ring of Honor. He's somebody who I think to an online audience has really ingrained himself in as far as his story, for how he was able to manage to find full-time work. So he's going to have, I think, a lot of fans clamoring for him to be in a full-time position for a long time. I think he's going to do great on New Japan Strong. Much of the roster, of course, he's already familiar with, and if those he's not necessarily called before, I have no doubt he'll be doing the appropriate homework to really absolutely kill it. So I don't see him not living up to expectations at these set of tapings. So the only question is how, what sort of position would they offer him if there is one? Will it be is New Japan Strong going technically a full-time company or not? Will he still be allowed to do Ring of Honor if and when it comes back in April?
Yeah, these are all questions. I mean, he's, like everyone, their future is very much a question mark. And if you have some kind of landing spot, I think people are going to jump at those opportunities. Last thing on the ROH show. I mean, we can look up and down this roster and potential landing spots. Unfortunately, there's not going to be spots for everybody, at least full-time ones. What is your expectation of the next step for the Briscoes? They're involved with GCW. You would think that they're at least doing a match in AEW with FTR. Do you see that kind of a place for them? And is there anyone, ROH, whether it be broadcasters, talent, that you think WWE would take any kind of a look at, or do you think they are so far away from that that kind of assessment of talent that would be representative on that roster?
WWE is really difficult to say. If it was 6 months ago, I think it'd be very different. WWE right now, can you see anybody, John, like male or female, that would fit within their current,
I'm very
wants?
high on Roxy. I could see her. It seems like she's at least going to do some stuff with Impact based on the angle shot on Saturday. The Briscoes, I think there was definitely a time that they certainly could have made the move over to WWE. Even today, I would be interested to see if they would be able to come in and, like, would they just be the Viking Raiders? Would there be any kind of appeal to the Briscoes in a WWE? I think it would be a very different version of the Briscoes, but I think that ship has likely sailed at this point. But I could also see them, like, people might just think it's ridiculous. I think they could absolutely adapt as just like a fun comedic group in a WWE setting that would be a totally different version than they've been accustomed to.
They absolutely could. But unfortunately, I'm looking at their ages. They're 37 and 36. They have people that they can cast as, like Southerners, who are tag teams. They in fact already have one of those teams in NXT in development at the moment.
Mhm.
So, and people who are at least a decade younger. So unfortunately, I don't see it, but I
I think
do
the age
see.
works against them, and it's going to work against a lot of the people that would be here. Like, I would be surprised if WWE looked at anyone here.
Mhm.
But who knows? Like, they certainly have their development process in place, and it seems to be very much a much drastically different view than even 12 months ago.
I mean, it felt pretty clear for me, like from watching the angle, that I think they'll at least get play out this FTR feud within AEW. Um, I I I mean, there's always going to be a bit of controversy attached to the Briscoe name, especially for, I think, an audience, and a bigger spotlight and a bigger platform on AEW. I sense from seeing their appearances in GCW, from seeing their appearance in ROH, that like the audience is largely um, able to at least move on from it, and largely. And I'm not going to say everybody. I think you'll still continue to see uproar. I'm not here to personally debate all that right now, but just looking at the situation, I believe they are going to be in AEW. I think at least live, they'll receive good reactions from audiences for those matches, depending on where they are, of course. And I look forward actually to the matches with FTR.
Also want to note UFC 269 on Saturday. They had a really big card. They did an $8 million gate, which would be the sixth highest in the history of MMA in the state of Nevada. So this was a very big card and notable in the sense that they did this gate without a Conor McGregor on top. This was Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title, and Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena, which I think would be the headline result coming out of Saturday's card, with among the biggest upsets in MMA history, with Juliana Pena, who I believe at one point on some books, Amanda Nunes was as high as a minus 1,100 favorite going into Saturday's card. Several years back, I was extremely high on Juliana Pena. She took a lengthy hiatus because she gave birth and then came back and had only had 3 fights since this return. She was coming off one win that got her the title fight with Nunes that drew some criticism, but there's not a whole long list of challenges for Amanda Nunes. And if you watch the fight, I mean, Amanda Nunes controlled the first round handily, and in the second had nothing left. And Juliana Pena just started attacking her with her jab, and Nunes just pretty much wanted it. It seemed like her strategy was just to throw bombs to get out of there, and was not landing, was further exhausted, and then taken down and submitted instantly. It was quite the moment for Juliana Pena to win this title, and it certainly opens up the division in a big way, and also creates a instant rematch as well. But this was a extremely big card for the company with that gate figure, and Charles Oliveira retaining his lightweight championship against Dustin Poirier, his second attempt to become the full UFC lightweight champion. He did hold a version of, well, the interim belt in 2019, but I'm very interested to see what the number is for this pay-per-view. Dana White stated it was an extremely high figure, which is, I think, great. A great sign for Amanda Nunes and Dustin Poirier, who I would look at as kind of your focal points of this card going in.
Yeah, coming out of this, people are comparing this upset among the biggest in the UFC, including, of course, Matt Serra, GSP, and also Holly Holman and Ronda Rousey. Watching the fight, I definitely put it more towards the Matt Serra GSP one, in that in a rematch, I think, there's still a very clear favorite, and it's not the person holding the championship. But my question to you, like, would you do the rematch immediately, or would you let Nunes or Juliana Pena fight somebody else?
I think at bantamweight, it only makes sense to do the rematch. But what was interesting is that they showed Kayla Harrison on the broadcast in the crowd, and they're deep into negotiations. And afterwards, Dana White was stating that had Nunes won tonight, her and Kayla Harrison would have been one of the biggest fights ever. And what's funny about that is that, like, Kayla Harrison isn't making 135. If she comes to the UFC, she's fighting at 145. And Nunes is still your 145-pound champion. There's nothing stopping them from doing that fight, which I think if promoted well, it could certainly be a very big fight. But I think coming off of Saturday and the amount of attention that fight received, I think Nunes and Pena is a huge match as well. So I don't think you can go wrong with whatever Amanda Nunes does next. For Pena, I think you have to run back the rematch with Nunes. I mean, this is someone that had not lost a fight since 2014. It was a huge upset. I couldn't imagine anyone kind of bypassing Nunes for a title fight in the meantime, unless you were taking Nunes out to do this Harrison fight at 145, and Nunes isn't available for your next several months while she's preparing for that fight. I think it creates a lot more scenarios in the division with this loss. So it was quite the card on Saturday night. The finals.
Full review from Eric Marcotte and Phil Chertok up on YouTube, of course, and also our free feed right now.
That is right. On Wednesday, New Japan will have the finals of both the Best of the Super Juniors and World Tag League at Sumo Hall. So we've got Hiromu Takahashi taking on Yo in the Best of the Super Juniors final. And then the Tag League comes down to Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi against Evil and Yujiro. Not the final I was expecting, of Yujiro to go all the way to the final. And this has been a tournament that I don't know how many people are following. It's usually kind of a lull in the New Japan schedule. I think it's more pronounced this year, that it just seems like this is a tournament that has existed on website recaps for most.
It's been completely off of my radar, I have to say. I've been hearing a whole lot more talk about New Japan Strong. I've been hearing a whole lot more talk about this Noah New Japan joint show that's been coming up weeks later. So something like this really does feel like it's their match is happening in a distant place that isn't really gaining a whole lot of my attention nor a whole lot of press, I have to say.
Stardom, we talked about that there would be a Stardom match on the second night of Wrestle Kingdom. That match will be a tag match with Mayu Iwatani and Starlight Kid taking on Tom Nakano and Saya Kamatani. And then New Japan president Takami Obari is stating they would like to have around 10 matches for each of night 1 and night 2 of Wrestle Kingdom 16. So getting back to a more full match card for both of those nights.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Makes sense. And the world is constantly in flux, of course. So hopefully things stay the way that they are. And yeah, all right.
And the biggest topic of all, I've saved for last. Tonight, Raw takes place from the XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. And as of Monday afternoon, this is what we have advertised for 3 hours of content tonight. Bobby Lashley wants in to the Day 1 championship match. Will he get in? Tune in tonight on Raw.
He wants in on the Day 1 championship match. Okay. I have a feeling
not Bobby Lashley is going to be in a match tonight. Not Bobby Lashley is going to speak. Bobby Lashley, the Almighty answers for his actions.
I feel like he will be successful. Something tells me.
I think you gotta sit through 3 hours to get that answer away. You can't say that definitively.
Well, it's not about the destination; it's about the journey. We'll see how they get there.
It's a long journey. It's a long journey. We're gonna sit through Lord of the Rings tonight to get to that match at the end. The announcement.
Looks like we'll also have Street Profits versus Ray and Dominic in the RK Bro.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They did announce that as well. So take everything I said and throw it out the window. You've got the Street Profits against Ray and Dominic.
Big question though. Have you seen the Succession finale yet, John?
Okay, this was a phenomenal finale. I thought maybe one of the best acted scenes ever by Roman Roy, Kieran Culkin. I was watching that, and listen, I'm far from a critic when it comes to acting, but man, you need to be at another level. And Kendall in the scene where he acknowledges his past sin. I mean, there were some unbelievable scenes in this finale. What did you think about the ending and Tom suddenly leaving this? What? What? It's over. It's over. It ended last night. Why can we talk about Final Battle and UFC, but we can't talk about Succession? Explain this to me. I don't understand. Where is the consistency in this?
You're right, Sean. Absolutely. I thought it was a fantastic show from beginning to end. And it's the type of show where, like, after seeing the conclusion, it makes you want to go back to the other episodes throughout the season to kind of retrace all the seeds that have been planted. And there are people
I'm going to do a rewatch from the beginning.
It's starting at the beginning. It's a show that is very rewatchable because I think the first time you watch it, it's like you may get like 70% of what's actually there. And especially again, rewatching the entire season, I look forward to it too because you can rewatch it from different perspectives now. You can rewatch it from a Tom perspective, and I think you'll get a whole different experience. You can rewatch it from a Logan perspective, and I think you'll get a whole different experience. Everybody in that cast is remarkable. It's brilliantly written. It's brilliantly acted. It's brilliantly pieced together. Just really a top quality television, I have to say.
Okay, but here's the philosophical question I want to ask you, Wai. Would you rather be in the endless middle or the bottom of the top?
Hey, man, this sounds very close to a professional wrestling reference at this point, but I would say bottom of the top. What do I need a soul for? Boo souls.
What if I gave you 20 Gregs underneath you? 20 Gregs?
Sign me right up.
I love that scene too. Those two are outstanding. Greg is still my favorite. I still maintain that at the end, when all is said and done, when all the dust clears, it's going to be Greg with that goofy look standing atop with all the power, all the juice.
It'll take quite the transformation, but he's certainly
the ultimate shark that no one is paying enough attention to. But if you watch everything is calculated with him.
He we'll see. I mean, at the end of this season, he ends up with the Contessa, and it's certainly a much better position. He's not going to jail, and he's in a great position in terms of a rank in the company. So he's a survivor, that's for sure. We have one super chat from Jake from the Windy City. He wants to know, are there any WWE Network / Peacock original content series that you're watching these days, like Back on the Double Shot? For me, it's Austin's Broken Skull Sessions. Other than that, nothing else is intriguing.
No, I can't say there's anything that I'm watching. I mean, what is the new stuff that is really in that vein? You've got the Broken Skull Sessions, Ruthless Aggression that's being released. They're hardly churning out the content that they once were. Nor would I be putting all my resources into new content when you've got a fixed licensing agreement. Like you've got your pay-per-views, you've got all the key stuff that is coming out. I wouldn't be putting a ton behind that either. But to answer the question, no, I haven't watched any of the Ruthless Aggression series. I wasn't wowed by the first season of it. I'm not going to spend unless there was something absolutely that was needed to be seen to comment on. I can't imagine I'll be sitting down to watch that. And I haven't watched. I think the last Austin one I watched was probably the Jericho interview.
Same here. I mean, given maybe current context, like I meet, there might be a bit of extra interest in seeing the Jeff Hardy one at this point, but beyond that, I don't even hear about much of what is new these days. The Ruthless Aggression series just kind of like came and went without much of my knowledge. Much of my consumption for professional wrestling these days, outside of like what I'm set to cover, is like what I actually hear people talking about. And frankly, like a lot of the new stuff that they've really debuted recently, I've just not heard about. Like I'm taking a browse through the site right now. It's um, like the Monday Night Wars. That's old, right? Like I'm trying
Really
to see
old.
like what's even recently added here. SmackDown, Talking Smack, ICW Fear and Loathing. Like like these random WXW shows. Like what else we got here? It's just like their standard stuff, like what sort of new series is actually out there. It's like their ICW tapes, WXW tapes, Main Event 205 Live, NXT UK. I don't really think it's something they're putting huge effort in towards cultivating right now.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up the Post Daily News Update. As we start another week, we will be live tonight at 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time for Double Ice Cap and Espresso members at postwrestlingcafe.com to go through 3 hours of Raw, where we will find out who are challenging RK Bro next. Will Bobby Lashley get his wish? All that and more tonight from St. Paul, Minnesota. And then a whole week of shows to come here on the network. You can go see the schedule at postwrestling.com. Wai, tell everyone the life change that you will receive if you hit the subscribe button at youtube.com/postwrestling.
Yeah, I will carry with me a feeling of joy throughout my day that I think will carry me through until 1 o'clock the very next day. So please, if you're watching this, please subscribe. Or man, can we talk about how big of a phenomenon this Hook kid is? Our Hook video that we just put up there from our clip from Rowena SmackDown is already one of the highest viewed videos in the site's history. So maybe we should just start talking about Hook for every single news story, John.
Yes, I think Hook can just go in the title of all stories.
What are your thoughts? Actually, we never got to hear from you yet.
It was can I talk about Hook's debut? Some people might not have seen it yet.
You can talk about Hook's debut. Yes.
It was tremendous. Like I thought to me, it was just a clear sign of the idea of how much the presentation is of great value, but it's also like having some substance there at the end of it. It can't just be all smoke and mirrors, and it can't all just simply be reliant on what happens bell to bell either. It's an entire presentation that felt deeply thought out and required some investment in the company to license out an Action Bronson song with the idea that this thing has kind of taken its own organic growth that we are on top of, that we are aware of. It's not like we're telling the audience, no, he's not a star yet. We'll tell you when he's a star. It's, look at this. We could not have fathomed that this thing would have taken on a life of its own. So let's take advantage of that and make him feel like a star from day one. And just to watch him with his walkout and going into the corner, just the little things he is doing, that tells me that he has grasped elements of this industry at a very young age already, which is always, I think, of great encouragement. And I don't think you can possibly not shine enough importance on Taz being the commentator for his son's matches. He was brilliant. Just to have that judo base and to have Taz calling it, that has always been such a huge strength of Taz's commentary. And now applying it to his son, I just thought it was like a really, really well done presentation, as I'll call it. And a lot of credit to Fuego del Sol, that I'm sure like was chosen for a very specific reason to for the strengths that he possesses to work with Hook. So yeah, I agreed with a lot of what you said on Friday as well, that this is someone that I think you do want to get those reps out with. I would not want to make him like this specialty attraction that only wrestles once in a blue moon. I think that would be, well, in the short term, you could build up to every 6 to 8 weeks. It's a Hook match, but the more important thing is this guy progressing at a quicker rate. And I do not want to see him thrown into the deep end immediately. That does him no favors.
How would you progress him throughout the, like as far as TV appearances go? Because the amount of buzz coming off of this one is definitely something that I don't think they've seen before with somebody having their debut match. How would you handle his second match on TV?
I think it's tricky in the sense that everyone is going to compare it to what felt like this home run on Friday that was nearly flawless in presentation. And it's got this specialness to it that I would not call it a failure if you cannot keep up that level of specialty every single time out without, you want to have, I think, a bit more kind of repetition now with the matches, and not every match is going to come away with that same level of praise and awe. Like some are just going to be matches, but that's okay. I think you have to look at where is he going to progress a year from now, 18 months from now. There's a lot of pressure that I did not fully understand until seeing this reaction on Friday night that is going to be on him. And I think we should be kind of not so much looking at him needing to be a star tomorrow when, it's a long road to there. If this guy is a star 5 years from now, that's what you should be aiming towards. So I would build up the second match as something significant. But I think you want to have a bit more regularity then. Like if he's on Dark, that's fine. That's not a demotion of Hook, and it's not a huge main event on even a Rampage. Like that's not a bad thing. I think you're playing the long game with Hook. It's not about match to match making him feel like a main event star.
Yeah, my concern is that like expectations coming out of this, I heard were so ridiculous at some.
They're totally out of whack, and it's just that won't do him any favors.
You don't get better. You don't become a master unless you make a billion mistakes. And this is the type of pressure that like is going to keep this guy from taking risks and making those mistakes in order to learn. And I hope that's not the case. So we can all get excited because he completely exceeded expectations. But I also think that we should be realistic in saying that this is a man who just had his first match. Let him have his reps, let him make his mistakes. And then 5 years from now, maybe he can actually be the guy that, we're all talking about who he should be. So anyway, John, thank you for some of those thoughts. And we'll be back tonight for Rolando Raw, won't we?
We will be tonight, 11:15 Eastern. Thank you for watching our post-daily news show.